I didn't know my life was about to split into a before and an after over a single letter on a transcript. An F, one bad grade in physics too. That's all it took for my father to look at me. Not as his daughter, not as the girl he raised on lectures about excellence, but as a failed investment. I don't invest in losses, he told me, standing in our kitchen with his coffee mug still warm in his hand. You've proven you're not ready. That was the moment he cut me off. Tuition, housings, everything. Just gone. But here's what shattered me. While I was filling out loan applications and picking up extra waitressing shifts, while I was calculating interest rates at 2 in the morning and crying quietly so my roommates wouldn't hear me, he was secretly paying $1,400 a month in rent and over $24,000 in tuition. Not for me, for my cousin, for Melvin. The same cousin my dad used to dismiss at family dinners, the one who barely graduated high school, the one who wasn't built for college, according to my father. Except he was built for something else. He was built from something else. Because when I opened a folder in my dad's office, just looking for the Netflix password, I found lease agreements, bank transfers, emails, and a photo dated December 1999, 9 months before Melvin was born. I remember sitting on the floor of that office, my hands shaking so hard I dropped my phone twice while taking pictures. My father didn't just choose to fund another kid over me. He funded his son, his secret son. And when I exposed the truth, 2 marriages collapsed, a business partnership exploded, and Thanksgiving would never look the same again. I used to believe intelligence separated successful people from everyone else. Now I know secrets do. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is burn the lie down. I'm 21 now, but the story really starts when I was little, when my life was built around one rule my father treated like religion. Education first, always. My dad, Richard, was 52 and had spent most of his life in commercial real estate. He worked with my uncle by marriage, Eugene, who was 51, my mom's brother-in-law through her closest friend from high school, Winona, 50. Winona and Eugene had a son, Melvin, 19. Our houses were practically stitched together, 3 doors apart, same neighborhood, same sidewalks, same block where the adults drank iced tea on porches and the kids rode bikes until the streetlights blinked on. So growing up, Melvin wasn't just my cousin. He was background noise in my life. At birthdays, he'd be sprawled on the carpet with a game controller. At cookouts, he'd be half listening while strumming a guitar. He was loud in the way I wasn't, careless, messy, always scraped up from skateboarding. I was the opposite. I was the girl teachers smiled at. The one who turned in assignments early. The one who got called mature. The one who could feel adults watching me like I was proof they'd done parenting correctly. And my father loved that. He used to sit at dinner and talk like he was giving a lecture to an invisible audience. Intelligence is everything, he would say, tapping his fork against the plate. It separates the people who rise from the people who stay stuck. My mother, Laura, 50, would nod politely even when her eyes looked tired. She didn't argue with him much. She had this way of smoothing everything over, like her role in the family was to keep the temperature stable. But my dad didn't do stable. He did standards. When I got straight A's in middle school, he didn't celebrate like other parents. He rewarded me the way a manager rewards a good employee. Approval, praise, a slightly softer voice. I learned early that love in our house had a scoreboard. By high school, I was taking honors classes, then stacking AP courses. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA, and my dad acted like I'd proven his entire philosophy. He promised me, more than once, that if I kept my grades high, he'd support me through college. Tuition, room, board, no stress. I'm investing in your future, he told me the day I hit submit on my applications. And you've earned it. I believed him. When I got accepted into a good state university about 2 hours away, he drove me to campus himself. He carried boxes like he was proud to be seen doing it. He shook my dorm advisor's hand and told her, "She's a hard worker. She'll do great." That first semester felt like a fresh start. 5 classes, new friends, long walks across campus with coffee in my hand. I got 3 A's and 2 B's, not perfect, but strong. I called home and my mom sounded relieved. My dad sounded satisfied. Then spring semester arrived with physics 2. And I didn't know it yet, but that class was the first crack in the foundation. Because in my family, failure wasn't something you learned from. Failure was something you got punished for. And what I didn't realize, what I couldn't have imagined back then, was that my father wasn't just strict. He was hiding something. Something that had been living 3 houses down from me my whole life. Physics 2 didn't defeat me overnight. It wore me down slowly. The lectures were at 8 a.m., 3 times a week. The professor spoke like he was translating from another language inside his own head. Equations filled the whiteboard before I even finished copying the previous line. I remember sitting there, pencil frozen midair, thinking, why does everyone else look like they understand this? I didn't skip class. I didn't give up. I signed up for tutoring. I attended office hours. I spent entire Saturdays in the library, surrounded by practice problems and half-empty coffee cups. I rewrote notes. I watched YouTube explanations. I tried flashcards, group study sessions, color-coded diagrams. Nothing clicked. When I failed the midterm with a 43, I felt something inside me fracture, not just academically, but personally. I had never failed anything before, not like this. I called my mom that night. I'm trying, I told her, my voice thin. I know you are, she said softly. Your dad he expects a lot. That pause between words said more than the sentence. The final exam came and went like a storm I knew I couldn't outrun. I failed that too. My final grade, F. 1 letter. But that letter carried weight in my family. It wasn't just a grade, it was proof of weakness. When I went home that May to explain what happened, I had already researched retaking the class. If I passed it in the fall, the F would be replaced. Clean slate, fixable. I believed my father would see it as a setback, not a collapse. I was wrong. After he cut me off, the tone between us shifted permanently. Conversations became short, practical, cold. But something else changed too. I started noticing things. In July, while scrolling through social media during a break at the restaurant where I'd started waitressing, I saw a post from Melvin. A sleek apartment, stainless steel kitchen, new furniture, a caption, settling in near campus. Campus? I texted him. Me. You transferred? Melvin. Yeah. Me. How are you affording that place? No response. 2 days later, at a family cookout, he talked casually about buying textbooks and taking a full course load at a 4-year university an hour away. I watched my father while Melvin spoke. He wasn't dismissive. He wasn't making jokes about art kids. He was listening closely, encouraging, proud. Later that evening, while I was stacking paper plates in the kitchen, I overheard Eugene and my dad on the patio. The window was open. Eugene said, I really appreciate everything. This means more than you know. My father replied, he deserves a real shot. My chest tightened. I stepped outside. What does he deserve? I asked. Both of them froze. It's not your business, my dad said flatly. My voice shook, but I didn't lower it. It is if you're paying for his college while I'm applying for loans. Eugene disappeared inside without another word. My father looked at me like I'd embarrassed him. Melvin is starting fresh, he said. He's showing potential. And I'm not? You already proved you couldn't handle the responsibility. That sentence landed harder than the F ever did. On the drive back to my apartment, now shared with 3 other girls because dorm housing was too expensive without his help, I kept replaying everything. Melvin barely scraped through high school. I had nearly a 4.0 GPA, yet he was getting a free ride. Unless there was something different about his situation, something deeper. And once that thought entered my mind, I couldn't push it away. Because when you grow up 3 houses apart from someone your entire life, you notice things. And suddenly, I started remembering conversations between my dad and Winona that lasted too long. The way my mom's smile tightened around her friend. The strange familiarity that felt practiced. I didn't have proof yet, but I had a feeling. And sometimes a feeling is the first crack in a wall that's been standing for 20 years. In August, my dad asked me to house sit while he and my mom visited my aunt for the weekend. I agreed immediately. Not because I was feeling generous, because their house still felt like mine. And because their washing machine didn't sound like it was dying every time it spun. Saturday afternoon was quiet. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors. The house smelled faintly like my mom's vanilla candles. I went into my dad's office looking for something simple, the Netflix password. He kept it in a small black notebook in his desk drawer. He'd always been paranoid about digital security. I opened the drawer. The notebook was there. So was a thick folder labeled Property Documents. It was slightly open. And I saw a name that didn't belong. Winona. I told myself not to look. I told myself this was none of my business. But something in my chest tightened. The same instinct I'd felt at the cookout. I pulled the folder out. The first document was a lease agreement. Melvin's apartment. Modern complex near campus. $1,400 per month. Guarantor. Richard Lawson. My father. My hands went cold. I flipped to the next pages. Bank statements. 4 tuition payments. $6,200 each, dating back to January. The same semester he cut me off. My breathing grew shallow. I could hear it in the quiet room. This wasn't a little assistance. This was full funding. Rent, tuition, everything. For him. I kept flipping through the folder. Printed emails. Years of them. At first they looked harmless, coordinating holidays, discussing business matters. But then I saw ones that weren't practical. They were personal. One from Winona. I appreciate everything you're doing for him. It means more than you know. My dad's reply. I want to. He's important to me. I just wish things had been different. I read that line 3 times. Then I kept going. An email from the year Melvin graduated high school. Winona wrote, watching him walk across that stage made me think about how complicated everything has become. My dad responded, I think about it too, especially when I look at him and see the resemblance everyone else seems to miss. The resemblance. My stomach dropped. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I sat down on the floor. But there was one more thing. A photograph tucked into the back of the folder. Old, slightly faded. Dated December 1999. It showed my dad and Winona standing too close at what looked like a holiday party. Their bodies angled inward. His hand almost at her waist. I did the math in my head before I even realized I was doing it. December 1999. Melvin was born September 2000. 9 months. My hands started shaking so badly I had to brace them against my knees. I felt heat rush to my face. Not embarrassment. Not fear. Betrayal. Everything snapped into place at once. Why my dad defended Melvin so fiercely. Why he funded him without hesitation. Why he dismissed me for one failure but called Melvin's fresh start admirable. This wasn't about potential. It wasn't about standards. It was about blood. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I pulled out my phone and took pictures. Every page. The lease agreement. The bank transfers. The emails. The photograph. My pulse pounded in my ears while I carefully put everything back exactly where I found it. Closed the drawer. Straightened the folder. Erased my fingerprints from the surface with the sleeve of my sweater. When my parents came home Sunday night, I acted normal. I hugged my mom. I avoided my dad's eyes. I drove back to my apartment and stared at the ceiling for hours. Part of me wanted to pretend I'd never opened that drawer. Part of me wanted to call my mom immediately and blow everything open. But one thought kept looping through my head. He cut me off over one F. He called me a failed investment, while secretly building another life 3 houses down. A life that might have been his first choice all along. On September 3rd, I made my decision. I opened my laptop, I attached every photo, and I sent an email to Eugene. No commentary, no explanation, just the evidence. And then I waited. The day after I sent the email, my phone rang at 9:17 a.m. It was Eugene. I stared at the screen for a full 5 seconds before answering. Hello? He didn't speak at first. I could hear breathing, heavy, uneven. Is this real? He finally asked. His voice didn't sound angry. It sounded hollow. Yes, I said. Silence. Then the line went dead. No goodbye. No yelling. Just gone. 2 hours later, my phone exploded. Mom, I answered and immediately had to pull the phone away from my ear. What did you do? She screamed. Her voice cracked on the last word. I told him the truth, I said, my hands trembling, even though I'd rehearsed this moment in my head. You've destroyed 2 families, she cried. Do you have any idea what you've done? Destroyed. That word hit differently than I expected. I didn't create this, I said quietly. Dad did. She didn't respond. She just hung up. That night, there was pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking. Pounding. One of my roommates opened it before I could reach it. Winona stormed inside. Her hair was unbrushed, her mascara streaked. You vindictive little girl, she spat. I stood up slowly from the kitchen table. You ruined my marriage, she continued. Eugene threw me out. Melvin is devastated. Do you know what you've done to him? Her words were sharp, but I noticed something else. She wasn't denying it. Is he my dad's son? I asked. She froze. The air shifted. It's more complicated than that, she said. Make it simple. Her jaw tightened. Go to hell, she whispered. And she left. The next morning, my dad called. His tone was calm. Too calm. You went too far, he said. I leaned back against my wall, staring at the crack in the paint near the ceiling. Did I? There are things you don't understand. Then explain them. Silence. Some mistakes, he said carefully, are managed quietly. People move on. Managed. Quietly. For 20 years, I asked. You've blown up something that was carefully handled. Is Melvin your son? A pause. Biology isn't the point. My heart pounded. Then what is the point? The point, he said, his voice sharpening, is that you've proven exactly what I was afraid of. What were you afraid of? That you're selfish. That the first time something doesn't go your way, you burn everything down. That hurt more than I expected. Because part of me had been wondering the same thing. Had I acted out of anger, out of jealousy? Was I punishing him because he chose Melvin? But then I remembered the loan applications, the late shifts, the way he'd looked at me in the kitchen and called me a bad investment. I didn't burn it down, I said. I just turned on the lights. He hung up. 3 days later, Eugene called again. This time his voice was different. Lower, slower. Can we meet? We sat in a coffee shop near campus. He looked 10 years older than he had at the cookout. I confronted her, he said. My chest tightened. She denied it at first, he continued, until I showed her the bank transfers, the emails. He rubbed his forehead. She admitted they've been involved on and off since before we got married. Before? She got pregnant with Melvin a few months after our wedding, he said. She knew there was a possibility. A possibility. My stomach dropped. Your dad proposed to your mom around the same time, Eugene added quietly. The timing snapped together like broken glass aligning. She said your dad married Laura because she chose me first. The words felt like they didn't belong in real life. Melvin wasn't home during the confrontation, but he heard. Eugene said he packed a bag and left that night. Hasn't come back yet. Why did you send it? Eugene asked me. I swallowed. He cut me off for one failed class, I said, while paying for everything for Melvin. Eugene nodded slowly. I understand why, he said, but understanding doesn't make it less of a disaster. He told me he was filing for divorce. The business partnership with my dad was over. He had already spoken to a lawyer. I walked back to campus in a daze. Everything felt unstable. 2 marriages collapsing. A business dissolving. Melvin homeless in a sense. My mom screaming. My dad calling me selfish. And somewhere in all of it, I kept asking myself, did I just destroy my family? Or did I finally see what it really was? That night, I lay awake staring at the dark ceiling. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about grades. I wasn't worried about being perfect. I was wondering whether the man who raised me had ever truly chosen me. And that question hurt more than any F ever could. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It spread, like cracks through glass. 2 weeks after everything came out, my mom called again. Her voice wasn't screaming this time. It was quiet. Can you come home? She asked. When I walked into the house, it felt different, quieter, like the walls had absorbed something heavy. My dad wasn't there. He's staying with his parents, my mom said. She was sitting at the kitchen table, the same place where he had called me a failed investment. Her eyes were swollen, but dry. I found out about the affair 8 years ago, she said. I felt like the floor tilted. You knew? Not everything. I found emails accidentally, similar to how you did. Her voice trembled slightly. He admitted they'd been involved. He swore it was over. He promised he would cut contact. And you believed him? She looked at me. I wanted to. There was no defensiveness in her voice, just exhaustion. I didn't want to destroy our family, she continued. I thought we could fix it. I thought time would bury it. But it hadn't. It had just grown roots. What I didn't know, she said carefully, was that he was financially supporting Melvin. Her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. When I learned that he was paying for another woman's son while cutting off his own daughter, she stopped. That was my breaking point. I didn't know what to say. All my life, I had seen my mom as the calm one, the mediator, the stabilizer. Now I realized she had been surviving. I'm filing for divorce, she said. The word hung between us. Divorce. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt inevitable. My sister offered me a place to stay, she added. You can come with me. I shook my head. I need to stay near campus, I said softly. She nodded. Then she told me something I hadn't expected. My dad called. He heard what happened. My grandfather. He wants to pay for your tuition. My throat tightened. He said you shouldn't suffer for someone else's mistakes. The following week, I sat across from my grandfather in his small office. He didn't lecture. He didn't use the word investment. He just wrote a check. For the semester, he said, and the rest, if you want it. I nearly cried. Thank you, I whispered. Finish what you started, he said firmly. Don't let anyone take that from you. Meanwhile, everything else was unraveling. Eugene moved forward with dissolving the LLC he shared with my dad. It was messy, expensive, lawyers involved. Your dad has to buy me out, Eugene told me over the phone. It's a substantial amount. I could hear the strain in his voice. Trust, once broken, doesn't glue back into place. Then came the paternity test. Melvin had finally agreed to one. Eugene told me about it quietly. They went to a clinic, he said. Results came back in early December. My heart pounded. He's Richard's biological son. There it was. No more possibility. No more ambiguity. Truth. Melvin didn't take it well. He shut down, Eugene said. Wouldn't leave his friend's apartment for days. Eventually, he agreed to come home. Eugene told him something that stayed with me. Biology doesn't change who raised you. Melvin moved back in. But he made one thing clear. He didn't want a relationship with my dad. He feels like he was part of a secret his whole life, Eugene explained. Like your dad was playing a role. That sentence echoed in my head. Playing a role. Had he been playing one with me too? Thanksgiving came and felt strangely lighter than I expected. My mom smiled more than she had in months. My grandfather carved the turkey. No one mentioned my dad until the doorbell rang. I heard his voice from the hallway. He asked to speak to my mom. They talked on the porch. Through the window, I saw him differently for the first time. He looked smaller, thinner, less certain. My mom came back inside and said, "He wants to talk to you." I stepped outside. He was sitting on the porch steps. "I'm sorry," he said. The words sounded practiced. "I've made mistakes." I folded my arms, not out of anger, out of protection. "I'm not working with Eugene anymore," he continued. "I took a job managing a restaurant 2 towns over." From real estate partner to restaurant manager. Consequences. "I'm living with my parents for now." I waited. "I want to rebuild something with you," he said. "With your mom." His voice cracked slightly. "I don't think that's possible," I said. He flinched. "You taught me my whole life that success and intelligence mattered most," I continued. "And the first time I failed, you cut me off." "That's not what—" "You funded another family while calling me irresponsible." "Melvin is my son," he snapped. "Yes," I said quietly, "and I'm your daughter." The silence between us was heavier than any argument. "You chose," I said. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I don't want explanations," I added. "I just want distance." He asked if he could call me. No. If there was anything he could do to fix it. No. I walked back inside without looking back. Through the window, I saw him sit in his car for a long time before driving away. Inside, my mom squeezed my hand. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. But that night, lying in my childhood bed at my aunt's house, I realized something had shifted inside me. For months, I had been reacting. Now I was choosing. And sometimes choosing yourself means letting someone else live with what they've broken. There's a strange silence that follows chaos. After the lawyers, the phone calls, the confrontations, life didn't explode anymore. It just felt hollow. I went back to campus for spring semester with my grandfather's tuition check deposited and my schedule rebuilt. I retook Physics 2 with a different professor. I sat in the front row this time. I got a B. Objectively, that should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like proof of something uglier. I hadn't been incapable. I hadn't been irresponsible. I just needed support. And the one person who promised to give it to me had withdrawn it the moment I stumbled. Some nights, I lay in my dorm bed staring at the ceiling, replaying childhood memories like they were evidence in a trial. The way my dad used to clap me on the shoulder after a report card. The way he'd say, "That's my girl," when I solved a math problem quickly. The way he never said, "I love you," without attaching it to achievement. Had it always been conditional? Or had I only started seeing it that way now? I kept his phone number saved in my contacts. I didn't block it. I didn't delete it. But I didn't use it either. That was the part that hurt the most. Not the screaming. Not the betrayal. The absence. He stopped trying after Thanksgiving. No more calls to me. A few voicemails to my mom, which she deleted without listening. It was as if, once he realized I wouldn't forgive him quickly, he stepped back. Like even reconciliation required a return on investment. Meanwhile, Melvin reached out. An Instagram message. Long, awkward. He said he didn't blame me, that he was trying to process everything, that Eugene told him he could still consider him his father, which made things more confusing. He asked if we could talk. I stared at the message for 2 days before replying. We met at a coffee shop near his campus. He looked older, quieter. "I feel like my whole life was staged," he said softly. I understood that feeling. He told me he decided Eugene was his father in every way that mattered, that he didn't want a relationship with my dad. "I don't want to be someone's secret," he said. Neither did I. We didn't hug when we left, but we exchanged a kind of understanding. Half-siblings. Cousins. Victims of the same man's silence. Still, none of that fixed the ache. The lowest moment didn't come during a fight. It came during something small. I was home helping my mom pack boxes as she prepared to move back into the house after the divorce was finalized. We found an old photo album. Inside was a picture of my dad holding me when I was maybe 3 years old. I was on his shoulders, laughing, my tiny hands gripping his hair. He looked happy. Genuinely. I sat on the floor and cried for the first time since all of this started. Not because I missed him, but because I didn't know which version of him was real. The man who taught me discipline, or the man who lived a double life. The father who told me I was his greatest investment, or the one who quietly funded another child behind closed doors. I felt untethered. If the person who shaped your sense of value turns out to be inconsistent, where does that leave you? For a while, I wondered if I had overreacted. If I should have confronted him privately instead of exposing everything. If my anger over tuition had clouded my judgment. But then I remembered the kitchen. His voice, "I don't invest in losses." That wasn't fatherhood. That was accounting. And I was done being a balance sheet. The dark part wasn't losing him. It was grieving the version of him I thought I had. The turning point didn't feel dramatic. There was no shouting, no slammed doors. It came quietly, in clarity. Early December, Eugene called again. "Melvin doesn't want your dad to know about the paternity results," he said. That surprised me. "Why?" I asked. "Because he doesn't want to give him the satisfaction," Eugene replied. "He said if your dad cared about biology that much, he should have cared about honesty more." I let that sit in my chest. Melvin, the kid my father called irresponsible, was choosing dignity. He didn't want to run into my dad's arms. He didn't want validation. He didn't want money. He wanted identity. I told him he didn't need a test to know who his father was, Eugene added, but he wanted answers. And now? He's decided I'm his father. Nothing changes. There was steadiness in Eugene's voice. Not ego, commitment. That conversation shifted something inside me, because for months I had been stuck in comparison. Who did Dad love more? Who did he choose? Who mattered? But suddenly I realized something. Melvin wasn't the chosen one. He was the hidden one. And I wasn't replaced. I was just raised by a flawed man. A deeply flawed man. That distinction mattered. A week later, I met with my academic advisor to discuss my major. I had been pre-med because it sounded impressive, because it aligned with my dad's obsession with measurable success. "I don't know if I want this anymore," I admitted. "Then don't do it," she said calmly. Just like that. No speech about wasted potential. No lecture about standards. It felt strange to choose something without imagining my dad's reaction. Accounting started making sense to me. Structured, logical, stable. But this time the choice was mine, not his. When my mom officially moved back into the house after the divorce finalized in January, we stood in the empty living room together. The house felt different. Lighter. "I stayed too long," she said quietly. I didn't argue. "You don't owe anyone your peace," she added. That sentence stayed with me. A few days later, my dad showed up at the house again. I wasn't expecting him. He stood awkwardly near the door. "I heard you're back in school," he said. "I am. With your grandfather's help." "Yes." A pause. "I would have—" "You didn't," I said gently. He flinched, but he didn't argue. "I thought pushing you would make you stronger," he said. "I didn't need pushing," I replied. "I needed support." That was the first honest exchange we'd had in months. No accusations. No shouting. Just truth. "I handled everything wrong," he admitted. I believed him. But belief doesn't erase damage. "I'm not ready to rebuild anything," I said. "Maybe someday, but not now." He nodded slowly. For once, he didn't try to persuade me. And that was when I knew something had changed. Not in him, in me. I wasn't trying to prove myself anymore. Not to him, not to anyone. The need for his validation, the thing that had quietly fueled me since childhood, was fading. In its place was something steadier. Self-worth that didn't spike with grades. Confidence that didn't collapse with one mistake. I walked him to the door. He looked smaller than I remembered. Less powerful, less certain. And I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Consequences don't always arrive with noise. Sometimes they settle slowly, reshaping everything without asking permission. By early January, the divorce was finalized. My mom got the house, half of the retirement accounts, stability. My dad kept his shares of the business buyout, though kept felt generous. Most of it went straight into paying Eugene for dissolving their partnership. The number was substantial. Substantial enough that my dad had to sell one of his investment properties to cover it. Substantial enough that he stepped down from the professional circles he used to dominate. I heard through neighbors that he was managing a restaurant 2 towns over. Long hours, lower pay, fewer suits. The man who once lectured about success at dinner now worked Friday nights overseeing kitchen staff. There was something ironic in that. Not cruel, just poetic. Meanwhile, the social fallout rippled through the neighborhood. People talk. They always do. At first, some of my mom's friends blamed her for not leaving earlier. Others blamed me for exposing private matters. But the more details surfaced, the length of the affair, the financial secrecy, the paternity results, the narrative shifted. My mom wasn't the woman who destroyed her marriage. She was the woman who endured it quietly for years. Eugene kept Melvin's paternity private. Only the 3 of them knew. Eugene, Melvin, and Winona. My dad didn't. That detail mattered. Melvin made it clear he wanted no relationship with him. "He doesn't get to step in now and act like he missed out," Melvin told me during one of our coffee meetups. He had gone back to community college. He was working part-time. "I need to know who I am without someone paying for it," he said. I respected that. The irony wasn't lost on me. The son my father secretly funded rejected him. The daughter he publicly cut off moved forward without him. Winona's situation was messier. Eugene filed for divorce quickly and cleanly. No drama, no drawn-out theatrics. He kept the house. She moved into a small rental across town. The woman who once hosted polished backyard cookouts now avoided neighborhood gatherings entirely. Her phone calls to my mom stopped. Her presence at family events disappeared. Silence became her new reality. As for my mom, something shifted in her after the divorce. She started smiling differently, not out of habit, but because she felt lighter. She interviewed for an administrative position at a law firm. She got it. I forgot what it felt like to be independent, she admitted one night while we were folding laundry together. She wasn't bitter. She was rebuilding. And I realized something important. The explosion I triggered didn't destroy everything. It exposed what was already fragile. My dad tried reaching out once more in February. He called the house. My mom didn't answer. He didn't leave a voicemail this time. He hasn't called since. There's no dramatic scene of him begging. No public apology tour. Just distance. Sometimes that's the loudest consequence of all. And here's the part that surprised me most. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt steady. I finished my junior year with solid grades. Physics was no longer a threat. Accounting classes felt logical, manageable. My grandfather continued covering tuition without conditions. He never once asked about my GPA. He just asked if I was okay. The contrast between him and my dad was quiet but profound. One offered money as leverage. The other offered it as support. Melvin and I text occasionally now. It's strange, navigating whether we're cousins, half-siblings, or something in between. But there's no hostility, just shared understanding. We're both figuring out our identities separate from him. And that in itself feels like victory. Because the real fallout wasn't my dad losing his business. It wasn't the divorce. It wasn't the neighborhood gossip. It was this. He lost the authority he once held in my life. And that's not something you can buy back. I used to think success was a straight line. Work hard, get good grades, make your parents proud, earn stability. That was the blueprint my father handed me. But life doesn't move in straight lines. It fractures. It reroutes. It forces you to look at the people who shaped you and decide what to keep and what to let go. I'm finishing my junior year now. My grades are steady. I switched my major to accounting. Not because it impresses anyone, but because it makes sense to me. That's new. Making decisions without imagining someone else's approval. My mom is rebuilding too. She goes to work every morning with a quiet confidence I hadn't seen in years. The house feels different, not emptier, just calmer. Melvin is carving out his own identity. Eugene remains his father in every way that counts. And my dad? He exists on the edges of my life now. His number is still saved in my phone. I haven't blocked it. I haven't deleted it, but I haven't used it either. Maybe someday that will change. Maybe it won't. What I've learned through all of this is simple, but it took 21 years to understand. You are not an investment. You are not a return. You are not a grade on a transcript. And anyone who loves you conditionally will eventually reveal it. The truth didn't destroy my family. It exposed the cracks that were already there. And in the aftermath, I found something stronger than perfection. I found self-worth that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. If you're watching this and you've ever been made to feel like your value is tied to performance, hear me clearly. Failure is not the end of you, but conditional love might be. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself.